recording. Okay, so what we have looked at so far, that we have string as a separate data type. So string is a little bit more complex than numbers or booleans, and it's because we have characters and each character stands on its own place. So basically, if we speak about strings, it's an organized string of characters, and each character has its own place. It has its own index, as we looked before, so we can actually address any of those letters. And strings can be done with four different types of quotes. So single quote, double quote, triple singles, triple doubles. And we looked at escape characters. You can find it later on. I will send you a GitHub link, and you can find it in a cheat sheet folder. You can see here Python escape characters, so you can see this table. Another thing I will recommend you is a W3 Schools website. Did anyone ever see this website? So it's not best for like Python documentation or anything, but when you start, it's a quite good one. So here you can see Python or in tutorials, for example. You can find it under the backend. Actually, it's plenty different other different languages also, but we're interested in Python. So if you want, you can go through tutorial yourself, or maybe later. It's up to you. But what I recommend, use the reference here. So reference is like a vocabulary of different Python methods and so on and so on. So here we will be looking at string methods today, for example. So you can always click string methods and get the table of methods for the strings, right? So you can just click on any of them. For example, let's say find, and you can see an example, and you can click on try it yourself and actually run the program or modify code inside and do something. So it's pretty much helper or something like to help you find information if you forget something, right? So another thing here is that most of the methods and everything are explained, and if you go to tutorial part, you can also look through different parts, for example strings, and here you can find some information if you forget something after this lesson maybe. So you can actually see, so a separate part for slicing, modifying, concatenate, and so on, escape characters, the one I showed you, right? So all of these escape characters, everything can be found here if you want to. So w3schools.com, it's quite old and quite helpful website, especially when you're beginning. After, let's say, 6-7 lessons of Python, you will be able to look into Python documentation also. I don't like giving python.org, remember I showed you last time. I don't like giving this documentation to starters because it's not written in like a beginner friendly way. So it's more like a large vocabulary of everything that Python can do. And we can actually try something like language reference and let's say numeric literals. And if I go here, what I would expect is just explain me what are the numbers and what can I do with numbers. But I scroll a little bit here. Was it a little bit? Well, I don't see they changed something here also, right? But you can see something like you look at the numbers and then it says, oh, take the math library, take that library, take that library, but you don't know anything about libraries yet. So that's why Python documentation is not user friendly. W3 Schools is better for beginners, but afterwards you will still be using Python docs when you're ready, all right? And I will continue here. So now when we know that strings can be sliced, that we can take part of the string, we need to understand what can we do with strings. And I will actually comment these out and go to the bottom and start showing. So first of all, one of the, let's say, most often string related tasks you can see is upper and lower casing. So we already spoke with you that in Python and pretty much any other programming languages, the capital letter and the lowercase letter are never equal. So this one is comparison operator. So if I try that and run, I can see false, that lowercase a is not equal to uppercase a. If I compare, you will see that lowercase a is greater than uppercase A, what doesn't seem logical to us. Capital A seems bigger. But you need to understand where all this comes from. There is a thing like Unicode character table. If you Google it, you will get the Wikipedia link as the first one. So what you need to understand that computers do not understand text. They don't understand characters. They do not understand words. They understand zeros and ones or numbers. Let's say it like that. So list of Unicode characters is a universal table of characters that we can use for most or pretty much every language we have. And if you look here to the bottom, you can see first table that stands for characters you don't usually use, like a null character or horizontal tab, or like backspace, carriage return, and stuff like that. So we don't usually use that, or we don't know that there's a character that exists for these parts. But what we do use is different symbols and alphabet. Right, so if you scroll here, you can see that we have a list of different characters. And the idea here is that all of these characters in this table are ordered. So each character stands on its own position. And you can actually see their position numbers here, right? So first, second, third, or decimal at some point. So it's like different ways of counting those. So if you look here, we can see that first one is a white space, and then there's exclamation mark, some symbols, then we have numbers from 0 to 9. Right, so afterwards we have another set of symbols like at, colon, semicolon, and so on and so on. Then we have capital letters. Latin. I'm speaking about Latin at the minute. So we have capital letters. Afterwards, we have another set of symbol, and then we have lowercase letters. And each next letter has a plus one to its number. So whenever we compare text, we compare capital A with lowercase a. What really happens, we compare their positions, and just because lowercase a is lower in this table, so it has a greater order number, this means it's greater. So we compare only these numbers and we say capital A is 65 and lowercase a is 97. Of course, 97 is greater than 65. And that's how we compare text, how Python compares text. And that's the reason why lowercase and uppercase are not the same symbol. And we saw that last lesson when we were working with variables. And now you can see that also when we work with strings. Speaking of different other languages, you can look through here. So for example, Cyrillic, for pretty much any Cyrillic language we have a separate table here, and you can see that the order numbers are even greater, right? So 456 and so on and so on. So if you will be comparing any languages, we all can speak many different languages. So go through this table, find the language you're interested in, and you can actually understand how it will be compared. So if we compare one string to another, if it's equal or not. Another thing, if we compare, for example, let's say access and access like that, if we compare words, not just a single letter, everything will be compared letter by letter. So first and first compared, if they are equal, so everything, so we start comparing second letter. If first letters are not equal, we're not comparing anything else. We already throw false because it's not equal from the very beginning. But for example, if it would be something like that, and large S, so every pair will be compared separately. So first with first, second with second, third with third, until we find the difference. If there's no difference, then they are equal. If there is difference, then we can compare which one is greater or less than. All right, so, and yep.
we just take each character, and it's enough to find one that is not equal, and then we say
Yep.
no, or
Yeah, for example, if you do it like that, this is an
yeah, this understand, but when we're doing greater than, for example,
yeah. So it looks like A is same, C is same, second C same, ES same, last one
this
is
will
not.
be true because S, capital S is before.
This will be false.
Ah, yes, sorry,
This
false.
will be
Yeah,
false.
lowercase is lower.
Lower in the table,
Bigger
so
than
it has a greater order number, so it will be bigger. So in order to get true here, we need to put less, right? So it's not a common thing to compare strings. Usually we compare if this string is equal to or not equal to. We don't compare greater or less than. But in case you need it, sometimes, for example, we have strings of numbers and we don't want to convert to compare. So you know you can compare numbers also, because if we speak about numbers, what was it? If we speak about numbers, they are all here in the beginning. Oh, let me actually scroll up like that. Right, so if you compare numbers, they start from 0 to 9. So 0 will be less than 9 because 0 is 48, 9 is 57. So we still can compare numbers while they are being presented as strings, not just integers or floats. So this is possible too. Right, so that's the reason why they are not equal, and that's the reason why Python is case sensitive. So one of the things that we need to do from time to time, especially if you become a Python developer, but not also, for example, if you will want to compare strings, so for example, you do some analysis and you need to know is that the same or not, you will have to transform your strings, and you can transform a string to either lower or uppercase by using methods. So methods that we used before were some word and brackets, right? So print and brackets, type and brackets. So there is another way of using methods by adding a dot after some value. Right, so here I have a string example variable, but it can be just a value. So if you put dot, you can already see that we have loads of different suggestions. So what methods you want to use. And all these are string related methods. So that's why Visual Studio Code is good, because you can see correct methods you can use with this data type. Right, so what we are interested in are two methods. One is upper, and let me actually do that again, string example. The second will be lower. Why would we need this? So for example, you all have some different social media, different accounts, and so on and so on. And have you ever mentioned that you can write your account name in all capitals or in lowercase or whatever you want, but it still works as a login, right? Because behind the hood, behind, let's say, in the backend of a website or backend of some program, when you enter your login credentials, it's automatically like a lower or upper method is automatically applied. And you compare lowercase string with lowercase string. So you won't have any problems. Otherwise, you would say, all right, I'll write my name with a capital letter, and then it doesn't work because capital A is not the same as a lowercase a, right? So sometimes you need to transform strings, and we use these upper and lowercase methods for that. Right, so speaking of lowercase, we have this one string example 4. So let me actually copy that, and I will show you two methods. Remember, I asked you to find this German letter for double S, and the reason for that is this letter doesn't have a lowercase. It's always the same. It doesn't matter if it's lower or uppercase. So we have these two methods, lower and case fault, and let's see the result of that. So when we speak about lower, it what it does, if symbol doesn't have a lowercase or doesn't have an uppercase, whatever, lower will just leave the symbol alone, so without touching. So you can see applying a lowercase to method to that will leave this letter unchanged, right? But using case fault will transform this letter to Latin alternative. So for this particular letter, it's double S. So it will change it. That was the only reason why I asked you to find this letter. I'm not sure are there many languages that have letters like this. I know about this one only. But just in case, because I have students from many different places. For example, I had a Jewish student who asked me, it was front end course, who asked me how can I write text from right to left, because their text is written from right to left. So how can I make a website writing a text from right to left? And that was a good question for me, because I never worked with languages like that. So we found a solution. So maybe some other languages, some other letters in other languages that need that. So just remember, we usually use lowercase. We don't change anything. We usually use lowercase. But in case you will need that, case fault is an alternative, and it will change whatever the Latin alternative for the letter is. Right. So another thing, uh, I like to say that users are usually funny or stupid people, or sometimes they do stupid things. So, for example, when you register to some social network and you are asked to enter your name and surname, some people can enter it with lowercase, right? So someone can enter his name with lowercase, and we as developers usually need to correct that. So I want on my website that user's first name and second name is written like it's supposed to be. First letter is capital and the rest are lowercase. For that, in Python, let's take string example 2. In Python, there is a capitalize method, and also there is a title method. So two different methods, and let's see how they behave. So capitalize is a method that takes a string, makes first character uppercase, and the rest characters are always lowercase, right? So only first character as a string, as a data type, not just like one sentence, just the whole string. First letter is capital, rest are the lowercase. Title, on the other hand, makes every word's first letter capital, right? So if you see at the output, you can see that pretty much every single word starts with a capital letter and the rest are lowercase. So this can be used, for example, after getting user's surname and first name, and before you save it to database somewhere, you can use title to write it down correctly. So later when you use it on your program, website, or analysis or whatever, this name will show up correctly. All right, so this is another way of modifying a string.
Why do we need brackets after each of these methods if most of the
That's a
time?
good question. In programming languages, brackets symbolize the start of the method, the call of the method. So if we use brackets, this means we are calling this method. If I remove these brackets and run it like that, I can see only that this is a built-on method title of string object at some memory cell, right? So if we don't put brackets, this means we don't run the method, but we just print the method itself. So what does it mean? Whatever it is. So brackets symbolize call of the function or call of the method. Without it, method is not called. So basically, if I delete that and run it, title method is never worked. It just says, all right, I'm a title method. That's it. So that's why we need to put brackets all the time. And later we will be creating our own functions, and I will show you, speak about these brackets one more time, because we can pass function as an argument, or yeah, method of function, we can pass it as an argument. So in that case, we will be passing it without brackets, because we don't want to run it at that time. We just want to let function know that use this method later on. All right. So these are some modifications we can make to the strings. One more thing, I will repeat myself once again. Strings are immutable. So what does it mean? That every time I'm using any of those methods, for example, here I use string sample 1 or string sample 2 example, it doesn't change the original string. It returns you a copy of modified string. So anytime if I want to write, for example, string sample 2 and run that, I will get the original string, not the modified one. So what if I want to modify a string and save the result to the same variable? Right? So for example, I want to take, let's say, string sample 1 and save this uppercase to the same variable. So the only way to do that correctly, you are saying that you have a string sample 1, example 1 variable, and you just assign it a new value, right? Strings are immutable. So I can say string example 1 dot upper, and let me print that for you. String example 1, right? So that's the only way to change the original. So I say that string example 1 will have a new value of the old value and method uppercase. So the uppercase string is now stored in this variable, and whatever was stored there before is now deleted. So we're not using it from beginning from here. So yeah, one more time, strings are immutable. If you want to change the value of variable with your string, you need to specifically assign a new value by using this equal sign and calling the same variable. Okay, so let's see what else can we do. We have this interesting one with extra white spaces, string example 3. And that's also a problem, especially nowadays when we all use mobile phones. And I know you mentioned that when you enter something and then you have these predictions, every time you push on a prediction, you get a white space added in the end, right? So for example, you write a word and now a white space is added automatically. And even when you type in your logins, and push enter, the white space is always added automatically, or you just choose that. So that can be a problem because your logging most likely doesn't contain a white space, but this white space is always sent with your message. So we need a good way. Let's take string sample 3. We need a good way to get rid of extra white spaces. And that's when we can call a method strip. Right, I will leave it empty for now, but I will show you that strip is not that easy. In strip method, you can actually add some values inside, but let's try it like that. And actually, so we can see the difference, let me print the original string here also. So I will do print string example 3 and string example 3 strip. So if we run that, we can see the difference. So we can see that on the original line, we have extra white spaces here. Well, it doesn't work like that in Visual Studio. In PyCharm, you can actually select only white spaces. In Visual Studio, it selects everything, so you can't see it. But you can see it in the beginning. Right, sorry. Right, but after I used the method strip, all white spaces were removed. And an interesting thing that white spaces were removed from beginning of the string and from the end of the string, but the one in the middle between the words stayed untouched. So strip is a method to get rid of extra characters. For now, it's only white space. To get rid of extra characters from left and right side of the string, from the beginning and from the end. So what if I will go up here and add something extra, like a couple of asterisks here, and let's say here also. So I have not only white spaces, but asterisks I would like to get rid of. So let me run that for now. Right? So we can see that logic still stays the same. I delete all of the white space from beginning and the end until I have a white space. As soon as we go to the asterisk, that's a different symbol, and strip stops working. Strip doesn't delete anything after that. So that's why we still have these white spaces inside. So strip actually, let me show you like that. You can see here on this table that strip method accepts something called chars, right? So these with the purple in there are arguments of the method. So the methods we used before, like upper, lower, case fold, capitalized, title, they never accept any arguments. So that's why we always leave these brackets empty. But method strip accepts something called chars. So we can actually provide it with something or leave it empty. So if I leave it empty, the default value will be used. And in Python for method strip, default value is white space. That's why white spaces were deleted. But if I, for example, say, I will leave a string here and say I want to delete a white space and an asterisk, so I'm basically writing a string of characters I want to be deleted. And if I do that and rerun the program, you can see that asterisks and spaces are both deleted. All right, so this works like take every character in this string and check if string starts with it and delete if it does.
But in this way, it's also possible to delete the, how do you say, triple spaces between two words, for example?
Between two words, no. It still works like left side of the string, right side of the string, and it will delete as many as you have, like one by one. If you get any extra symbol in between, so for example, I will put, let's say, an exclamation mark here, so it will stop deleting right before after the exclamation mark. So this white space was left untouched, right? So if you have like these symbols one after another, it will delete all of them. If you have some other symbol in between, then it means like a border stop. So we stop deleting.
So only the two extremes of the string.
Yeah, left and right side of the string, beginning and the end of the string. And
if we want also
in the, I will show you.
like some letter.
I will show you. You can add letter here too. So for example, I would like to add letter E, and it will delete me letter E in the word extra, right? Because we have white spaces, asterisks, and E's, they all one after another. You can see it here. So white space, delete, delete, asterisk, delete, 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 E, delete, X, we don't need to delete X, so we stop deleting from that point. And the same stands for the other side. So we delete all the white spaces until we find the character that is not in these brackets. It's not in this string. You can also, let me actually copy that here. You can also use L strip or R strip. So that stands for what side of the strings you want to delete those. So L string like left side of the string, R string right side of the string. So you're not deleting from both, but you can pick from which side you want to delete. Right, L strip or R strip. It's the same method, but only deletes from one side. So L strip from left side of the string, R strip from right side of the string. All right, so what if we need to replace something, right? So we need to replace something. We'll use, let's do example one, string example one. There is a method replace, right? Method replace. So we can replace something with something else. And if you look at this table here that showed up when we put these brackets, you can see that this one accepts three different arguments. The previous one had one argument, a string of characters we want to delete, but here you have old, new, and also a count, right? So old stands for what are we looking for in the string? What needs to be replaced? So for example, I want to replace the word world in the string. Remember, string example one was hello world world, right? So I want to replace world. Next, the new argument stands for what I want to replace it with. So for example, I want to replace it with the word planet. Okay, so if we run that, did I save? Print string sample one, replace world with planet. Okay, I need to comment this one. Remember, I showed you how to replace the original. So I'm looking for world with lowercase, but here we actually changed the whole string being to uppercase. And that's why nothing worked, because there is no lowercase world in it anymore. Yep, so if we comment that out and run it again, we can see the result. So replace looks for a combination of symbols. In this case, we are replacing the whole word, like 5 letters, but it can also accept one letter, for example. So we can change one letter or one symbol. But what if I want to replace it once, right? Not all of the worlds, but only once. There's a third argument here named count. So you can actually say how many times you want to replace. So let's say 1. Then only first occurrence will be replaced. I know most of you want to ask, what if I need to replace second? Or what if I need to replace third? But it doesn't work this way in Python.
Actually, I wanted to ask why not zero? Because I know in programming everything starts from zero.
Yes, here we are not saying which one we replace. We're saying how many. That's why we put 1. So we're not saying we want to index 0 to be replaced. We're saying that we want to replace one word, one instance. If I put 2, for example, it means 2 instances, 3 instances, and so on and so on. So it's not like indexing, it's counting. So count starts with 1. Indexing, yes, always starts with 0. But replace can also be used for another interesting thing. So what if I want to delete something from my string? So I want to get rid of something. For example, I will do the same example, but I will say uh, find all white spaces and replace them with an empty string. So what happens here? I'm saying that first argument is always what are we looking for. Second argument is what we are replacing with. And we are looking for white spaces and replace them with empty string. So empty string means nothing. So basically now replace works like delete. So we just found all white space spaces in the string and deleted them, right? So replace can also be used to delete stuff from string. I'm not sure if I will be doing that with you, but for example, I have one lesson where we read the book from the text file, like a book, some large book, and the task is to find how many words are in this book and how many unique words. I mean, for example, if it's like a window, I already counted window once, I'm not counting it anymore. So like how many different words I have in this book. And this task requires you to first lowercase or uppercase everything because you need to compare like similar things, and you need to get rid of punctuation. So you need to get rid of dots, commas, exclamation marks, question marks, and so on and so on. Because if your word has a dot in the end and the word without dot, it will be considered as two different words by Python, right? Because we have an extra symbol. So this will also help there. I'm not sure if we will be doing that with you. I will see how we manage, but yeah, there is a task like that. So replace. Replace can be used uh, for replacing stuff or deleting things. Right. So let me show you something else. We can also count. We do the count method. We can count occurrences of substrings in larger strings. So for example, I want to count how many letters O are there in the first string. So I can do it like that. Right? Count. I get the result 3. 3 is an integer. And one interesting thing. Yep. So all other methods we used returned us a string. Right? Good. So all other methods returned us a string. So strip, lstrip, replace, upper, lower, capital. But this method returns us an integer. So count how many O's are there in string example 1. And there's 3 O's. Or you can actually type the whole word, world, for example. How many words world are there in string example 1? To the top. Right, so there's 2. So you can count, and yes, this method returns us an integer. So I already told this once today, and I will be repeating myself every single lesson, that if equation, for example this one, we take string, use method count, and we get integer in return. So if equation returns us an integer, the whole equation can be considered as integer. So that's an integer. What does it mean to me? I can multiply it with anything I want because I get integer instead of that, right? So same here. I will do another example. So for example, I have this string sample example 1, and I'm using replace. Let's say I'm replacing world with, let's say, planet again, right? So planet. What does this equation return in terms of data types? String, right? So I get a string in return. So whole this equation returns a string, and that means it can be considered as being a string, right? Because it returns a string. What can I do with string? I know string methods. I can put another dot here and say upper, for example, right? So first of all, we take string, use method replace, get a new string in return, and this upper method will be applied to a new string. So we can actually chain these methods like that in a row, and they all be executed one by one. So first of all, we replace, and then we use upper, and maybe then I want to use count something, and so on and so on. So these methods can be chained one after another, and you need to understand that concept that if something, it doesn't matter how big this equation, in the end returns you a string, this means you can use string methods with the whole equation, right? So, or use this as a string anywhere. And it will be the same thing with other data types. For example, if something returns you a number, it can be considered being a number, and you can do any operations you can do with number. Later on, we will look at lists, sets, tuples, and dictionaries. So if something returns you a dictionary, this may be considered being a dictionary. So that's how programming works. And that concept will help you to understand how to deal with like big chains or big equations, because what I usually see, people don't use this thing like that. They start with something. Don't write it down, I'll just show you example. So for example, example one, and they do, all right, string example one, replace, for example, world with planet. Then they start doing, all right, example two, and they take example one and use uppercase here. So it's not needed. As soon as you understand that if equation returns you a string and you can chain methods with it, so you don't need to create extra variables, right? So you can actually do a couple of steps in one equation if it's okay with you. Sometimes it's not the best way to do it. Sometimes you would like to create a separate variable for some reasons, but in most cases, yeah, you can actually chain methods. All right, so I will be repeating that concept every single lesson because it's very important to understand how the programming works, and it helps you to write like more readable code. It helps you to create less variables, and it helps you to understand how like the data types and type changing works in general. So it is like that. Right, so what else do we have here? I will show you the last one from these methods, and I want to show you how to build strings of different types. So last one will be, last one here will be method find, right? So find, let's say, world. Uh, we get an integer in return, 6. So what do you think 6 stands for? Index, right? So if we use find method on a string, what happens? We look for whatever we ask inside find. So there's one argument. In my case, it's world, and we are looking for worlds. And if we look here, right? If we look here, we can see 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 is the first index where first world is located. So method find actually throws you an index where it exists. You can also add to count and find. Let me see. You can also add start and end indexes. So if you want to limit where you're looking for, so for example, I want to start to count word beginning from index 7, and I know that first word is on index 6. So before that, I got answer 2, and now when I'm starting to look from index 7, I will get only one word because index 6 is not included, so I can't get this first word from this sentence, right? Same here. I can actually put two numbers. First one will be start, second one will be end, and I can also limit my search. So I can say find beginning from 7th index, and I will get a different answer. I will get 12 because it's second word now, right? So this can be limited. Question I always get here is, what if I need to find all of them? Or what if I need to do something? In most cases, we will have to use regular expressions in order to find something inside texts. I will speak with Maxime, do you, if you need or not, this regular expression theme, because I think working with text and knowing regular expressions is more important than using this find or count. So this find and count can help you, but that's not something like magic that you can do. But regular expressions actually can, And speaking shortly about regular expressions, you don't search for exact words even with regex. You search for patterns. So, for example, I'm looking for Estonian national ID, and I know that Estonian national ID can start with numbers from 1 to 8, not a 0, not a 9, so I can describe that. And then next two letters is the year of birth, so pretty much any combination of two numbers. Then there's a month of birth, and I know that I can be from 01 till 12 and nothing else, so I can explain that in a regular expression. And then day of birth can be from 01 to 31. So basically, I can explain Python the logics of how Estonian national ID looks like. That it's exactly 11 symbols long, and I can find any occurrences of that combination in any text, right? So if I need an email, I will say, right, so take letters from A to Z, then minus, dot maybe, then it should be followed by at sign, and so on and so on. So regular expressions is like writing a pattern to look for something inside text. I will speak with Maxime. I think it might be important to you. I mean, this topic. All right. Any questions on methods so far? Because I didn't show you all of the methods to work with strings. And if we go here, remember I showed you these W3 schools today. If you go here, type reference and string methods, you will see a bit more methods here. So we have something like center. We didn't look at that, right? Center. Basically, in my case, I think it's absolutely useless method. But what happens here, you provide it with a string and then use a center method and say 20. So that means that new string must be 20 characters long. And this word, banana in that case, should be right in the middle. All right, so Python adds white spaces here and after to make the string 20 symbols long and put the string inside the middle. So for me personally, I never use that, but sometimes maybe you will find that. So here you also have these I call them Boolean methods to check something if it's true or false. So for example, ends with. So you can check if string ends with some special character or word, whatever, and it will tell you true or false. We will look at those Boolean methods later when we start looking at if-else statements, so we can actually try something. But if you're eager to find it, to look at those methods beforehand, because we are not going through all of them, and you are always welcome to open that reference table on the W3 Schools website and just go through one by one. Some of them will be quite hard to understand. So, for example, make trans or translate. So these are not what you think it is. It's like finding symbols and changing them to different symbols. So these methods can be quite hard to understand, but some methods are quite straightforward. So for example, z fill, zero fill. Sometimes we need a string of exact length, but we don't have enough numbers. So 50 and the length of the string must be 10. So z fill method just fills the beginning of the string with zeros in order to get the correct length. All right. So what I recommend you is to find some time and go to that page. So you go to tutorials, reference, and then go to string methods and just have a go through all of them at least once. Yep. If you don't understand some of them, no worries. You can ask me, or we can, or maybe we will look at that later in our course. But I don't want to make it our lesson like, and this method does, and this method does, and this method does, because there's many different methods, and I'm trying to concentrate on the most important ones. Okay. Any questions so far?
Yes.
Yep.
Problem with the find.
Right.
Let's see. Okay, replace the word. To try to look
You have a white space after the method, and that's, yep. Because Python is really strict. In JavaScript, you can do that, so you can add extra white spaces, upper and no white space, and point. So same is fine. Have a look. You won't find anything. -1 because you're looking for lowercase s and your string is uppercase already. You're welcome. Yeah, method find returns -1 if it didn't find anything. Right, so -1. Okay.
If we have to say the most common general rule is you put the argument dot then method.
Well, this one's not argument. This is a value, some value. So it's like variable or just string itself. Then dot method. So the difference between
depends on the method if it requires arguments or not.
Yep. So some methods require arguments, some methods may require or have a default value, like it was with strip. So strip could be empty, then it meant white space, or you can add whatever you want yourself, right? So some methods like replace require 2 arguments. So what are we looking for and what are we replacing with? Otherwise it won't work. There's no point. Like we're not looking for anything, right? Or we're not replacing with anything. So methods are different. You will understand more about methods when we start covering functions, because functions is pretty much methods are pretty much functions but inside classes. So in couple lessons we will start looking into functions. We will create own functions with own arguments, with own default values for arguments, and then you will understand how it works a little bit more. Because what I like about Python compared to other languages, if you control click on a method like that, you will be allowed to see a little bit under the bonnet of Python. So you are allowed to see how it's written inside Python, and you can actually see that we have this function find with some arguments and so on and so on. And also, think, nope, not here. We can also do something like right click and go to definition declaration type definition. So we can actually, this one was that. Let me try definition. Nope. Implementations, I think. Nope. What was the declaration then? Well, not for this one. Let me try for the print. Print is a different one. Yep. Right. So we can actually look what happens behind. And another thing is a help method. So if you want some help about different methods, in my opinion, it's better to go to W3 schools and read there. But if you want to do it inside Python, you can always use a help method inside. So you put a help method and add whatever you need help with into the brackets. So for example, I want to add str.find, right? So why I'm using it str? Str is a class in Python that represents string, right? So string example 1 is a string. It's an object of class string. So I can use the class name itself, the same method, remember, that we used for conversion from one type to another, and ask for method find from there. And I can run it and get a result like that. So that's like a built-in Python help. So you can see, all right, find is a method. It has sub, start, and substring that we're looking for, starting index and index, bless you, and a little explanation and what it returns. All right, so like built-in Python helper. In my opinion, if you go to W3 schools, you will get more readable and more information, like to understand. Yeah, but this example can be, for example, you don't have access to internet. So, for example, you have Python installed, you are somewhere in the country, you don't have internet or something, but you want to code and you need help with some method. So you can use that built-in method. At least it will help you at some way, right? So that's method help for you. Okay, so let's comment everything we were printing here. And let's see how can we actually build strings, because there's a couple of different ways we can build strings. Let's create a couple of variables. I will say a is equal to hello, b will be equal to world, and we will try combining the strings with something else. So there are many different ways of building strings, and I will show you all of them. And I think in the end of the day, you will like one that I will show you in the very end, the F string, so the formatted string. But you still need to understand how most of them work. So first of all, we saw that our last lesson that we can actually add strings. So we can add one string to another. I will do that in print statement, but you can also save it to variable. So for example, A plus B. We saw that our last lesson. This is called string concatenation, or shortly you may see it as concat. You might find it in documentation sometimes, or maybe the methods with same name. So concatenation of strings, basically adding one string to the end of another. And that totally works, all right? So hello plus world, we get this hello world, but there's a problem, right? We don't have a white space in there. So can we add a white space? Of course we do, because we can add strings. So I can add plus white space like that, and it will work. Another way of building strings, but only inside a print statement, because this will work if we save it into variable. So what we do, we basically add strings, and we can save it to variable. I can say, for example, x is equal a plus white space plus b, right? So I can save this value, whatever the value is. So it's hello space world. I can save it to variable. Print statement, if I write the print statement here, you can see values, and it has asterisks in there. So whenever you see an asterisk next to the argument, this means you can put unlimited amount of arguments, right? So unlimited amount. So what does this mean? It means I can say I want to print A, I want to print B, and separate them with comma. But that will only work inside print statement, all right? Not outside of it. Maybe I want to add something else, planet. Maybe I want to add something else, people, for example, and so on and so on. So if I do that, the white space will be inserted automatically, right after I put comma. And there's a good reason for that. But before I explain how it works, let me try to add something else. Remember, we were not allowed to add different data types to each other. We had to convert. So if I put true in here, I will get a type error, because I cannot add Boolean to a string value. So what I had to do here, I had to convert, and only then Python would allow me to add it, right? So just the word true converted to string. But if I do the same thing inside print statement after the comma, so for example, something like that, it will work, right? And white space is inserted automatically. The reason it works inside print statement by using comma is that print statement will convert everything you pass it automatically to a string. But you can't save it to variable. So if you say x is equal to that, it's not correct. You will get a different data type. Your data type will be list, not a string. It will be a list, because you're passing like some amount of different values separated with a comma. You will get a different data type. But it works inside the print statement. So if you don't want to convert something, and like you have a short message or something, and you need to print it, not store it in some variable, you can go that way. Just put commas and put different values. They will be converted automatically. So how does it work? Why does the print statement, and also let's leave an empty print, for example, so you can see that each print statement always starts on a new line.
Because by default it has this new line.
Yes, inside the print statement, there are two more parameters. Actually more, but we will look at those two. Sep stands for separator, and end stands for whatever I should end this print statement with. So by default, and one more thing, just because values is an unlimited object, so we can pass unlimited amount of values. In order to change sep or end, we need to specify like sep equals. Only in this case we can change it, right? So otherwise it will be part of these values, right? So I can say that separator is nothing now, empty string, right? So now my print statement will not insert white spaces after each element I passed it. All right, so I can change it to something else. I can say add me 3 asterisks, right? So it will add. Or maybe I want to every single word on a new line, so I can put /n inside, and it will just print everything, like every single word line by line. So I can actually change the way print works, change the way print separates these values separated by comma. Okay. And stands for what do I put in the end of the string, and by default it's a new line. That's why every single print statement prints to a new line. But I can change that also. I can say put something exclamation mark in the end, and let me just print something afterwards, test for example. So what do I see now? My separator is a new line, so every single element, so hello, world, planet, people, true, is on a separate line because I put line break as a separator for these words. But I say that end the string with exclamation mark, and I said by default it's a new line. So now instead of putting a new line, the string is ended with exclamation mark, and the next print statement is written right after, because there was no line break in the previous print. Right? So you can actually play with print as much as you want, but unfortunately whatever happens inside print like that cannot be stored in a variable. So that's a behavior of a print method. It can help you like print some data to console, but it won't help you to build a string and save it somewhere like in any way. Any questions here, or more or less okay? Right, once again, sep stands for whatever I separate these values with. By default it's a white space, so if you don't enter anything in sep it will be a white space. And by default is a new line, so whatever I put in the end of this print statement. Okay, so, but we need to create lines, and we know that we can strings. We know that we can add strings. Why? But when we add strings, yes.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm trying to do this example, but
Yep.
I don't understand what I'm doing wrong.
Let's see.
So it's fairly simple. So string example.
You don't have any second value first of all, so there's nothing to separate, right? So you just put string
So it
example.
requires two.
At least two. So if you have two values, if you have two values, you put separator between them. If you have one value, so there's nothing to separate. That's why you don't see the separator.
I assume it goes within the string and then it changes.
No, if you have, for example, if I have like what only the word test here, or let me do a new line. let me show others. So for example, world, whatever, and I say separator is equal to, let's say, asterisks. All right, there's nothing to separate. There's only one value, world. But if I add another one, let's say planet, right? So now I have two values, and now I can use separator between them, right? Then I only use separator between them. You're welcome. Right, I will comment these out. So first things first, you can add strings. We saw how can we print strings, but that doesn't help us to store this data, only to show it in the console. But this example on line 55 shows us how to build a string, and this string can actually be saved to a variable because we add strings, so we're creating a new longer string. Uh, what's wrong in here? So if you have any numbers, if you have any other data, you still have always to remember, right, it's a number, I'm adding it to the string, so I need to convert it to string first. And that can be frustrating, especially when we build some large text. For example, you do, let's say, accounting program for employees, and you need to do a pay slip, and you need to print out the name, surname, then salary, and something else, and many different data that needs to be converted to create a single string. So there are a couple of different ways we can go around that adding and converting all the time, and we can actually do an easier have an easier way to create a string. So first one, it will be a formatted string. So let's say we have, let me actually comment these two out as well. So for example, we have, let's say, we have a salary, right? Salary, let's say 2000. For example, I have this data. I also have a string. Let me do a string. So for example, I want to say John's salary is, and I want to add that salary inside it. So I could do something like that and then use the plus sign and create the string. But what I can also do is leave curly braces in there. Just empty curly braces. So for now, nothing will happen. But these curly braces stand for like a reserved spot, and we can use another method to add values there without specifically converting those. So what we can do, I can say, let's do it in print statement, string dot format, the method format. And method format, as you can see, remember what this single asterisk next, as many as you want, as many arguments as you want, single asterisk. So I can say send salary here, right? And what I get, without any conversion, the number was automatically added to the string. I can also add something like $sign afterwards, for example, right? So John's salary is $2,000. I can also add, for example, empty braces here. So two of them, right? Or three, or four, or many. Then I can create a variable, let's say name is John. So while using format here, I can say name salary, right? So still creates the same sentence, but now I can reuse this string because, for example, I have 20 different employees and I need to print that for each of them. So I pass a new name saying Mary, new salary, and I can reuse that string as many times as I want. What I personally don't like about this approach is that we have to remember the order of variables. So we have to remember that first one must be a name, the second one must be a salary, because nothing tells us what are we inserting here. So one way of doing that, we can actually add numbers. We can say this one will be 0 and this one will be 1. Or maybe I want to add more. Maybe I want to add another one and another zero. It's up to you. So you can mix up. It doesn't have to be in the correct order. But when I run that, you can see that whatever the first argument I pass here to the format method is considered being a zero. Whatever the second argument here is considered being a one. And so on and so on. If you have three, you can add number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. It's up to you. You can also, for example, pass two values but never use one, right? So, for example, you can do it like that. So just use zeros, but you pass name and salary. It will also work. But still the same thing. I have numbers. Numbers are more helpful than empty brackets, of course. Uh, the Let's say the strong side of using numbers is that we can reuse the same value many times, right? So if I leave them empty, for example, I just don't delete it for yourself. I will just show you example. For example, I want to use name again. Then I have to pass name two times if they are empty, right? Because first name goes to first bracket, salary goes to second brackets, and another one name goes to third. But I told you in the very beginning of this course that programming is a story about not repeating yourself. So if you see that you are repeating yourself, doing something twice, for example, passing the same variable twice, this means you're doing something wrong and you need to change everything. So programming is always about not repeating yourself. So if I have numbers, let's say 0, 1, 0, I can reuse that first value without specifying it once more, because name is always a zero here and salary will be always one, and I can reuse this name as many times as I want. If I have like a large sentence, maybe I don't know, 20 sentences or something like that, I can always put brackets and zero and know that there will always be a name. Okay, but is it self-explanatory? Not really. So we have numbers, we know about order, but we still have to look, all right, what's zero? Okay, name is a zero. What's salary? Salary is a1. So there's another way you can do it even better. So instead of that, you can actually leave a variable name in there or some name. Let me actually comment that out and write a new. So let's say product is equal to computer. And let's say price is equal to, let's say 3000, right? So I will write a string saying this product costs price, and I'm not using these variable names, right? So I can actually change it to P and PR and still leave product and price here. So let's actually do it this way so you will understand what I'm trying to show, right? So let's use the format method, print string dot format. Right, and now I don't have any numbers. I don't have any orders, right? So I have these keywords inside, product and price. So inside format method, I can now say that product will be equal to P and price will be equal to PR, okay? So that's exactly the same thing we did with numbers inside these brackets, but in this case, it's more self-explanatory. So when you read that code, you pretty much understand that some product goes into that place and some price goes in here. And without even running this code, you still have some understanding of what will happen and what should go where. So instead of this 0 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, you have the exact keyword so you can read and understand what happens in here. So that's another way of using that. Should I give you some time to finish to write it down? Mhm. Another interesting thing about formatted strings is that Python allows you to format data you provide there. So what's I'm meaning? For example, a price. So how do we usually see prices in shops? It's a price in, let's say, dollars, comma, cents, right? And if we speak about salary, money, we usually say, all right, 1,000, comma, 00, 1,000, comma, 99, or whatever. So usually we provide prices with cents, even if it's zeros. So mine is 3,000. And even if I put it like that, make it a float with double zeros, and as soon as I run it, 10 will be deleted. So it's not the correct way we show prices, right? So what Python offers us, let me open that for you. Formatted string in Python. Yep. Here on W Free Schools, we can see these formatting types. These are very different. I will show you a couple, I guess. So, for example, the one here, use comma as thousands separator. So, for example, if my price is something big, like quite big, I can say, so it's colon, where was it? Colon, comma, right? So I can use colon, comma, and run this code, and my price will automatically be formatted uh, to the format where every thousand is divided by comma, right? So if I want to show it this way, otherwise, if I delete that colon, comma, so my price will be just a normal one. So I can actually format the output of data without changing the original, without creating some string from this number, right? So I just say, okay, I want commas as separator. Or for example, here underscore, the same thing. I want to use underscore, it's underscore here, right? So divide with underscores. Uh, I don't want to go through all of these formatting types. You can actually do it yourself on a string format page on the W3 schools. But just let me show you a couple of more right here from the website. So for example, this one, use plus sign to indicate that result is positive. So by default, negative result has a minus and positive result doesn't have a sign, right? But if I use that, uh, right, text format -3 and +7, so we have this plus. So if result or number is positive, then the plus sign will automatically be added, so you don't have to specifically write it down. All right, so there are quite many of them. Most of them are like binary format, decimal, scientific format. You don't need those for now, at least, like octal, hex format. But those are in beginnings here are interesting. So use a minus sign for negative values only. Use a space to insert an extra space before positive numbers, and so on and so on. So actually, this can be helpful. The one I want to show you is this one, the fixed point number format, the colon F. And that's an interesting one because I told you that prices are usually written down with like two numbers after the comma. So I can say column 2F, for example, that stands for two numbers after the comma, right? So floating point number, and that will return me, let me do the old one, 3000, sorry, dot 2F, like that. Yep. So I put dot 2F, that stands float with two numbers after the comma. If I want four numbers after the comma, I can put 4F. right? And even 4 zeros will be shown. So that's how you can format the outputs of values without actually changing the original value.
I couldn't catch this line 64. Why we use 0 and 1 as example?
These ones.
Yeah.
So 0 stands for whatever the first argument here is. 1 stands for whatever the second argument stands. So you can use 0 to enter, in that case, name, and 1 to use salary. It's better to use numbers than leaving empty braces, like I showed in the before, without numbers, because if you don't have any numbers, you can't reuse values. So if you need to use name twice and you don't have any numbers inside, you will have to say name, salary, name, for example. So repeating the thing. And these numbers stand for whatever order of the values you pass here in the form. So whenever you see 0, it will take the first one from here, 1 will take second, and as many as you want. So 10, 5, 12, it's up to you. Right, so next example, I don't want you to write it down. I will copy it myself and just show you. And the reason for that is that it? Yep. And the reason I don't want you to write it down, just let's have a look. It's an old way of creating formatted strings. So this one came from Python 2, I guess. And we are not using these anymore, but I just want to show you. So maybe you will work with some older code written before, and maybe you will have to deal with those. So the logic is similar. I will start with that example, X and Y. So the logic is similar. You write a string, but instead of putting curly braces, you put a percent sign and then a format, right? And after the string, you pass the value using the same percent sign. So that was an old way of creating it. I will show you the new way right after this example. But in case you will see it, I know that most people, what I'm not sure if you will be learning MySQL with me and adding MySQL to Python. I will show you how to use the formatted string, because I know that uh, most people try using like an F string wrong, and they think that it doesn't work with MySQL. Actually, it does. There's one nuance. But in MySQL connector examples, there is like a library to connect Python to MySQL database. You will see these with percent signs, right? Logic is easy. So you have percent, then you add F for float, I for integer, S for string, right? So percent %s means there must be a string there. So I can show it on the other example. Right, we will take, oops, sorry, this one. We have a long,
Was it I for int and S for string?
S for string, I for int, and F for float.
Okay.
Right, so here you can see another example. So we have this, we don't need this one for now. You see another example. So here we add strings, and you can see that here. So percent sign, then I put a keyword inside. So pretty much similar to what we did here, right? So the keyword, but you can see the letter S in the end. So you have to put S, telling Python that a string goes here, right? So if I run this code, you won't see, for example, name is emp name is John. So you won't see John's, but you will see John. Let me run it, right? John. So this letter S stands for a string. So percent %s means you need to add a string here. Same here, age S or salary dot to F. We already format that to float. So is it a good way of using Python? Well, it's a little bit old, right? So nowadays we don't do that, and sometimes.
Stupid question, but could it have been avoided if we already told earlier that John would be a string? For example,
No,
name
no,
is
no.
your
In
string.
Python, there is a thing like typing, so you can actually say that, for example, emp name is a string, right? So you can actually add type. So you can say emp name is a string, right? But that's only for you. So when you next time you will want to use the emp name, Visual Studio will tell you that must be a string. So that's like a tip. That's not a rule. In other languages, typing is strict. So if you say this must be a string, then it must be a string. In Python, this is more like a message for whoever will use this code or rewrite this code. I will show you more of these typings when we deal with functions, because in functions I find very useful to specify types, because sometimes your function expects string and someone passes an integer there and he gets an error. So you can specify that that parameter must be a string. So it will still get error if user passes a number in there, but at least he will see in these messages when he tries to use the function that he should put a string. So but that's more like an advice for whoever writes a code, uses a code, rather than a rule. So Python is not strictly typed, and I think you can use a strict typing, but you need a typing library for that. It will just make sure that it checks the type. If it's not correct, it will throw error before you can run your program. But that's like a different library, a different approach. In basic Python, typing is never strict. So you can actually say what type it is, but it doesn't have to be so. Right, so these are the old ways. So let's see about the new way of doing that. So let's say we have name Jack. Then I will have salary again, 3,000. So what if I want to use variable names? Because I do have variables. I have variable name, I have variable salary, and what we did before in these examples, like with this product, we had to create a keyword and then pass a variable to that keyword. So we're like making an extra step. We're creating an extra keyword, or if you want, so extra variable. So I have variable p. I would like a way to insert P here, not just say product and product is equal to P, right? So I'm doing some extra steps. So what Python came with is so-called F strings. So you can type letter F and only then open the quotes, and that makes automated formatted string in Python. So what does it mean for us? It means that I can insert curly brackets and use whatever variables I have in my code. So I can say name as salary, right, is salary dollars, right? And if I want to use any formatting, let me actually print that first. So why is it different for whatever I showed you before? You don't have to use an extra method, right? So you don't use format method, for example. You don't use any of these percent sign or pass the variables after the string. You are writing your text. And wherever you want to insert a value from a variable, you can just put curly brackets and push that variable straight away. You don't have to convert anything.
And here you can use those double quotes inside the string as well.
Yes, you can use that's pretty much the same string. So you can put F in front of single quote, in front of double quote.
Yeah, I meant like if you use two of the other type of quotes inside, they won't like start and the new string.
On I think Python 3.12 or 3.13 it won't be, so I can actually do it like that. I think 3.12, no, 3.12 doesn't run like that. 3.13 maybe. I'm not sure. There was some changes
No,
that
more
you
like
can.
if you put a double quote in there.
I mean here.
Yeah, and then like another one after the name, for example.
Yeah, but it doesn't interfere with single quotes outside. So if we use double quotes here and double quotes here, like so it still will interfere. I'm not sure, I don't remember the exact Python version, but from some version they allowed using same quotes inside and outside the string. I think maybe here plus, let's say, check. Yeah, it's allowed to use it like that. So, for example, you can use another string with single quotes inside curly brackets and it won't interfere. But being honest, I usually try to avoid situations like that because it's sometimes not predicted. So you forget that it must be inside curly brackets. You try to enter it somewhere here. So yeah. So
Where did you get the F on the name?
you just type an F. F. It's letter F. It's just because changes the letter because of the Visual Studio how it works. R string is a raw string, so whatever character inside the R string. So, for example, uh, we know that let's say A slash N B, right? So we know that slash N stands for the line break. But if I put R in front of here and run it again, every character will be considered as character, not a part of Python codes or F string. I mean, in the end, F string will use it as a new line. Yep. So if you put it here somewhere, it will be a new line. So F string still works like a normal string. Just the only difference of F string and normal string that you can use curly braces and variables from outer scope inside.
And then R string goes that it just creates
Yeah,
very
our string is like raw string, so it just like well, there are some cases where it still be using like escape symbols and so on, but usually yeah, R string stands for do not consider any Python code inside the string, just take everything like it's written. So
yeah, okay, so the variables inside curly braces just print out like curly braces and names.
yeah. So this one with F string, you can still use this formatting. So for example, point to F, it will still work here exactly the same way like we used before. So we can add these double zeros or any other formatting inside. But F string is a lot better, a lot easier to use because you only put curly braces to the spots where you need to add some values, but everything else around these curly braces is your normal sentence, your normal string, and you don't have to remember numbers, add extra variables. So in my opinion, F string is the best way of creating strings, and it was actually added later in Python. So the previous variations were added from the beginning, and the F string was added later on, so like in newer versions of Python. You can also hear a name like literal template for the F string. So that's a different, like a more scientific name for that type of strings. Literal template. It's used in JavaScript. In Python, we usually say F strings, but that's pretty much the same thing. All right. So I will show you another thing, another one. I will copy it. You don't have to write it down. I think we will speak about that more when we cover the working with files, when we will be able to open files, read files. But let's see. Uh, there is a thing called byte string, right? Byte string. So what does byte string stand for? You can see a letter B in front of the string, and then you can see slash some symbols, 6Fs, and so on and so on. So that represents bytes. So we have text files and binary files. So text files is pretty much any file that you can open with a notepad and read whatever is inside. Do you think Word document is a text file or a binary file? Binary, because you need a special software to open and read it. You can't read it with a notepad. Yep, it won't be readable. You will see something, you will pretty much see bytes. They are not readable, but you can see bytes. So Python can read any type of files. It can be binary or it can be text files. If you read text files with Python, you will get text in return, so string of text. But if you read binary file, for example, a picture or a music file or a video or something like that, there's no text inside, or at least there's no readable text inside. So what you get while reading binary files, you will get something like that. So these represent bytes, and these can be read by Python. These can be interpreted by Python. Of course, you won't be able to read the picture and translate it to text and log it to console somehow. So it's impossible. Or you need some extra library that will allow you to draw pictures inside the console. But we can decode and encode strings, and I will show you other examples later on. But the thing here, there's a hidden message inside, right? The one that was translated to bytes. And if I use the method decode and put some encoding, in this case it's UTF-16, and run that, I can see that I have some, I'm not sure if it's Chinese or some other language, but I see some symbols. And we know that symbols like that are not usually a keyboard symbol, so they need some special character map to get those. If I change that encoding to, let's say, UTF-8, the same symbols will be translated differently. So encoding is something that how you read bytes and what symbols do you return. I'm not sure because I'm Russian speaking, like my mother language is Russian, and there was time when there was separate encoding for Cyrillics and separate encoding for any Latin languages. And when you go to a website on Russian having this Latin encoding, you don't see any letters. There's like some crazy stuff. Then you change encoding and everything is readable again. So you had to change that. Nowadays, we use this UTF-8 encoding that pretty much covers everything. So it covers most of the languages, at least I think for Estonian, for this special symbols in Estonian, there is a separate encoding. I'm not sure it was Windows 1257 or Windows 1252. One of them. One is Scandinavic, one is Baltic. Don't remember which one. But UTF-8 covers pretty much everything and most of them. Right. Yeah. No worries, you can open. Right. That will be it for today. I will send you a link to a GitHub. It will look something like that. Yeah, it will be that link, but I will send it to you. So this one I added from the last lesson, as I said before, so you can open and look through files. You can open any file and basically copy text from here. For today's lesson, I will add another folder, and there will be a homework file, homework.py. So there will be some tasks using these methods, string methods that we use today, nothing like too complex, but please try to find time and finish those by the next lesson. So in the beginning of next lesson, we will discuss, see how it's done. Next lesson, we will be taking complex data types. So list, tuple, set, maybe dictionary. I'm not sure if we will have enough time to cover a dictionary at the same time. Right. Any questions so far?
Yes, one
Yep.
question. Can you highlight the code somehow?
Yeah. What do you mean?
For example, maybe use it as a studying material.
Mhm.
So I would like to highlight, let's say, 84 to 86.
I'm not sure about highlighting. Highlight. We can try. No, sorry. Highlight. Yeah, there is something like that. So you can actually use some extension. What I use an extension named Better Comments. I use extension named Better Comments. So basically, what it does, it extends your comments by adding an extra symbol in the beginning. So if you want to create, for example, Right, so this will make a red comment, exclamation mark. Then you can put a question mark to make it blue, or you can write to do to make it orange, or you can add, I think, no, there was asterisks for green, but you will see this. And actually, you can go to settings here. So what was it? Settings, and here in edit and settings.json, you can actually add, oops, sorry, you can actually add more tags and more decoration for your comments. So you can create your own colors and symbols and so on and so on. So I'm using those. I never thought about highlighting code, but what better comments help me with larger projects where I want to somehow make comments visible and so on and so on. So for example, I usually use to do and then some task when I know that code needs to be added here or I need to write something here. Sorry? Yeah, it does highlight. The idea here was not just highlighting some parts of code, but highlighting whatever you want to highlight. So let's say pay attention to this block of code or something like that. So custom highlights. So that's why you need an extra one. All right. So if there's no questions, that will be it for today.